Hello, and welcome to the RPG Rundown. I'm Seth.
And I'm Jeff. From Dungeons to Deep Space, we've got the systems and the stories for your table. Today, we're going to take a look at some of our favorite TTRPG mechanics from across multiple systems. Seth and I have had the opportunity to play over 15 different TTRPGs, which has been really awesome. And today, we're going to be breaking down our absolute favorite mechanics from across all of those systems. And who knows, maybe in the process, you might find some to bring into your own game. But one thing we do want to ask is if you have some cool mechanics that you've enjoyed, maybe you've seen homebrewed or you've played in other systems, hop on over on YouTube and drop them down in the comments. We'd love to see what you guys have played, what you've liked, what you've enjoyed, and maybe things we can implement in our own games. Before we dive too far into it, do we have any news today, Seth?
Yeah, we got a couple things. And also, if you want to leave that comment in YouTube, make sure to give us a like and subscribe at youtube.com/at the RPG Rundown LTN.
Indeed.
So, into the news. We have just a couple things we wanted to highlight today. We have D&D, Wizards of the Coast, is returning to Greyhawk, the Greyhawk campaign setting in the 2024-25 DM's guide that will be coming out sometime. And they're also allowing for third-party publishing for the setting,
Nice.
which, if you don't know, Greyhawk was the second ever setting for the Dungeons and Dragons game, and it was Gary Gygax's home setting for his original campaign in the 70s. So, have you played any Greyhawk at all?
I've not played Greyhawk, but I did in one of my previous worlds that I was playing in. I did bring over one of the towns from Greyhawk as kind of a throwback to Gary Gygax in the world that
Nice.
he created. And I basically took the whole town and just put it into my world. So
Awesome. Um, in other news, just a couple quick starter updates for any of the ones that you know that we're following. I know there's a ton out there, but three in particular that we kind of mentioned last time and that I've been following. Kobold Press has their 5e their 5e rules setting called Tales of the Valiant, and they have already had two successful Kickstarter campaigns, one for the Player's Handbook and the Monster Vault, and then they had one for the DM's Guide, their DM's Guide. I have received both of those. And now they have one for the Labyrinth. It's called Into the Labyrinth. The Labyrinth is basically their multiverse. It's their term for the plethora, the numerous worlds that connect all of their worlds together. And so they are actually coming out with a source book for it. It's going to be really cool. And it's got like, it's almost like there's a lot of connective tissue for stories to happen in between worlds even. So,
okay.
yeah, it's
That's
it's
interesting. Yeah.
really cool. There is an adventure book that's coming as well. I think I only pledged for the the setting book itself for the Labyrinth, because I figured I would get the adventure book later on. But I wanted the world book basically. So yeah, it's coming out. It's got a whole bunch of really cool additions and rules. I think there's going to be, new additions that will supplement the DM's guide and the player's handbook in there as well. So, but it is currently there's 42 hours to go as of the time of this recording. There are almost 3,000 backers, and there are it's sitting at 328,000 which it only had a pledge of like 50,000, a pledge goal of 50,000.
Right.
So, easily 600+% of its original goal. And I knew that this one would be a lot smaller compared to the Player's Handbook, Monster, and the DM's Guide, because those raked in millions for sure. So, So there's that one. Then I know we mentioned it last time, but there's the Terry Pratchett's Discworld RPG that launched on Kickstarter on October 15th, actually, and it is sitting at 1.5 million of the original pledge goal of 130,000, and it has 8,600 backers, and there's 17 days to go still, so it could easily reach 2 million. So
Right.
Nice. All right. And it's got some really cool pictures in there. That's like, what's the really weird artwork where it's like all the stairs but in different directions?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's got some artwork like that, and I feel like that's the general vibe of this RPG. That it's very out there. So cool with that.
Okay.
And then the last one is a little indie RPG that is. I actually backed the first version of this. It was under a different name, but it's by a single developer, and is called the Pin role-playing game, or Play Easy Now. And it is a very modular system that is super easy to teach and learn, and then you can expand it to your heart's content. But it's currently on Kickstarter. There's 12 days left. It's got 60 backers, and it's right at almost $3,000, and it needs to hit 3,570. So if you're interested in it, just about there. But another cool thing about this is that it's super inexpensive to get into. You can get the PDF for $15, and that's one of the goals when you watch the video, is that he wants it to be more accessible. And so definitely check it out if you like checking out small indie developers. Definitely check the Pin RPG by Josiah Mork on Kickstarter. So check that out.
Okay.
Back it if you care to, and hopefully help him get to his goal. So
yeah, that would be awesome.
But so that's really it. Like we didn't have just a ton of news in the last 2 weeks that I was just like, oh yeah, this really stuck in my brain. So I think with that, let's dive into our main discussion for the episode.
Yeah, let's do it.
And we're going to talk about our top 10 mechanics from any system. So, Jeff, why don't you start us off?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start off with one that it's not incredibly unique, but it is something that I really enjoyed, and that would be the duality dice within Daggerheart. So Daggerheart is not a D20 system like we're accustomed to, at least not for the players. It is for the GM, but that's a whole different story. For the players, you actually have two D12, and they operate as, one operates as hope, and the other operates as fear. And so they do different things. You can say you have a DC of 15. You can roll your 2d12, and you can roll a combination and equal 17. Now you succeed, but do you succeed with hope, which is a positive outcome, or do you succeed with fear, which may still accomplish what you want, but there may be a negative consequence to the roll, something else that happens. And I think things like that just make the gameplay really exciting. And I do like that even like hope and fear is used even in initiative in Daggerheart, where if you roll with fear, it kind of ends player initiative and it gets to move to GM. I like the duality dice. I really think it's a neat mechanic. It also gets you a few more math rocks to roll, and it also opens up the realm of customization. Imagine you have a hope dice that's nice and like white, and then you get like the resin die artist in my brain is thinking like a clear one with black tendrils coming down that represents fear. I don't know. I thought the duality dice was a really neat mechanic, one that I enjoyed playing with in the game. But yeah, I know yours is fairly similar, right?
Yours? Absolutely. My first one is actually the narrative dice from the Genesis system from Fantasy Flight Games. It originally started with the Star Wars Edge of the Empire RPG, and that's where I picked it up, obviously. And the funny thing is that it is actually one of the... there were multiple inspirations for the Daggerheart duality dice, but this was one of the major inspirations for Daggerheart, and they mentioned it in their original beta material. And I still love, even though I haven't played it in a while, I still love the narrative dice system that originated with the Star Wars game. They're totally custom dice that have they are 8 and 12-sided dice that have basically there's 4 different things on it. There's you basically have like, and again, this is one of those things that is kind of taken over it. But basically, there was success, there was threat, and there was triumph and despair. And so you actually had, so hold on, let's see. There was threat, and oh my gosh, now I'm totally forgetting my own thing. No, there is.
And I've played this one time with you,
Yes,
and
I know.
and it
And
was
now
a while ago, and
my
unfortunately
brain.
I can like somewhat remember the symbols on the dice, but I cannot remember what they were called. Was an opportunity? Was that one? Was something with an O?
No, that was
No.
from.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so, pardon me. There is success and failure. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is advantage and threat.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's triumph and despair.
Okay.
So there's actually 6 things. So success and failure, pretty obvious. For some reason I was thinking there was different names for that, but it's simplistic is always better, right?
Right.
So success and failure. And the whole thing with the Genesis system is that you roll a pool of dice, and basically your skill checks, whether it's for using the Force on somebody, for doing an attack, or for trying to influence somebody with your Han Solo-like attitude and swagger. They all have a skill, and that skill, instead of being based on a number, your skill is basically a certain number of dice.
Mm-hmm.
And so an average skill check is 2 8-sided or green of positive dice. And if you are proficient, or if you are, extra skilled in it, you may have more than 2 green dice. Or if you're proficient, meaning you're like, I can't think of the word in other systems, but you basically get a yellow 12-sided die that has extra sides with more success and advantage symbols on it. So all the positive dice have success and advantage, and then the yellow ones, which are the proficiency die, have success, advantage, and triumph. And then all the negative dice have failure and threat, and the purple 8-sided die are the negative version to the green, and then the red 12-sided die are the opposite of the yellow, and they also have despair. And so basically you roll like cancels like, so failure cancels success and threat cancels advantage. But the cool thing is, and this is where the duality die gets its mechanic, is that you can fail but have advantage, or you can succeed but have threat. And so both of these 2 systems, these 2 mechanics, narratively help the players and the GM. Because if you succeed but you have a threat, or if you succeed with the duality die but then you succeed with fear, both of those give you that kind of, I swung my sword and I hit the bad guy, but then my sword kept going and it got stuck in a tree, and so then maybe the bad guy has advantage against me the next turn. So mechanically, it helps drive the narrative, and same with the other direction. You could fail, but maybe you swing your sword this time and you caught it on the ground, but instead of hitting the bad guy, you ended up spraying sand in his face. And so the next round, you have advantage. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Star Wars, in this the narrative dice from Genesis, the triumph and despair are basically your critical success and critical failure, but there's kind of an extra layer to it. And so I really enjoy that. It's a very elegant system, and the duality dice kind of brought it down to make it a little easier, as well as bring it into into like your standard polyhedral dice set with numbers as opposed to custom symbols. So
right.
But yeah,
Very nice. Yeah,
love it.
And yeah, whenever I played Star Wars with you was actually the first time I encountered that kind of narrative die, and the way different things can happen, you succeed but still have a consequence and such, is really really interesting. Going into my second one is actually a GM mechanic from Daggerheart, having to do similar with the duality dice, and that was the way that as the GM you could spend fear, and so fear within Daggerheart for the GM is kind of like your core resource, right? You can never have more than 10 fear tokens, but as your players roll fear, you get to kind of collect a fear token for yourself. Now you can then use those during combat. You can spend them. There's different things.
I mean that it's.
Yes.
I was gonna say the tokens and stuff is a little different, I think, in the most recent iteration.
Right.
But yeah, okay,
I didn't mean. I meant to add this whenever I was talking in the very beginning.
Okay.
We are currently talking about the mechanics we have play tested and enjoyed. If that mechanic has been changed, that's not our fault, but we liked it, and it could be implemented.
It is still a resource for the GM.
Yes.
I know that there's a difference with a little bit different with tokens.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, they kind of took half of it out. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of remember you mentioned it. I have not gotten a chance to look at the updated rules. But whenever I was GMing it, I thought it was
I just
really neat.
know we'll get some people that are going to correct us in the comments. But by all means,
true.
please correct us.
Right. And that's the thing is I'm commenting on the mechanics that I enjoyed when I play tested it. Those mechanics could be changed by now, but I did enjoy them the way they played at that time. And that was like I said, with the way that you were able to spend fear. So as the GM, you had a pool resource of fear that you could pull from and spend. There were you had certain things that like your enemies could do. I have one pulled up here for the playtest adventure that we played, which was the Thistlefolk Thief. I could spend a fear. It has a move called Back Off. So spend fear and make an attack roll against a target. On a success, the thief places their hand on their chest and blasts them backwards, dealing 4d8 magic damage and pushing them into far range. And I have to spend a fear anytime I want to use that. And I only get fear whenever my players roll with fear. And the fear duality dice is the higher one. You could also use fear. So some examples here that I had was spend 2 fear to interrupt the scene with a GM move. Right, spend a fear when making an attack roll to add an additional d20 and take the highest result. Right, spend a fear when making a damage roll to add an additional d6 to the total. And so just little things that allow the GM to make the combat or encounters more dynamic, which I thought was really interesting. Because like we've all been in that. If you play GM, if you've done the GM role at all, where you're like, this is going to be an epic fight, and then your players just roll through it like it was nothing. Well, you have a little bit more control over that now with fear and being able to like, oh, you know what? I'm going to spend fear and I'm going to take back over the scene, and this enemy walks out and. I don't know. I thought that was a really neat mechanic. I'll have to look at how they've updated it, but I did enjoy it whenever I tested it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly the same. And I know our friends over at the Pocket Dimension have gone over it, and as well as the videos from Darrington Press and Critical Role about how it has changed. But yeah, I mean, like. It's still, as the mechanic, it's awesome to have it also interrupt the turn order sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So it does add that element of surprise a little bit.
Right.
Awesome. Well, cool. So yeah, my second one, or number 4 on our list, which we're we're really not keeping track because these aren't in any particular order.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Except the last one.
is
The last one's always best. That's what YouTubers say, right?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is the initiative and actions from the Cosmere RPG.
I like this one as well.
So it's the initiative and then the long and short actions that go along with the initiative/turn order. And the whole thing with that system is that the initiative is always follows this format where it's basically player fast actions, NPC fast actions, player slow actions, and then NPC slow actions. However, you get to choose what kind of action you're going to take for that turn. And so basically, if you're going to take fast actions, you only get a certain number of action points. And if you want to take slow actions, you get an extra action point. But you have to wait until the fast actions are done. There are some rules that can let you, if your allies and the enemies are taking actions, maybe your ally takes an action and they do something that is going to totally negate the slow action you had planned. If it's still before the NPC fast actions, you can switch to a fast action too. And so there's a flexibility in that initiative system that I know we both really liked as we played the Cosmere RPG, aka Stormlight RPG.
Hey, I still have a mechanical pencil that says Stormlight RPG, so that's what it is.
Yeah, we do. I mean, come on now, it's right here by my desk.
Hey, there we go. Yeah.
And then on top of that, all the stuff that we bought at Gen Con this year says Stormlight RPG, like my dice, which are never far from from it. So.
Right. Absolutely. And the cool thing, I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say too. I don't know. I might have missed this. I was glancing over here for a second. Did you talk about the actions that you get with fast and slow? The number of actions.
Yeah, just that there's a difference. So like with the fast actions, you get 2, and then with the slow actions, you get 3 actions on your turn. And the cool thing is, as a difference for other games like Pathfinder or DC-20, those actions are specifically actions for your turn. One of the things that I love about the Cosmic RPG is that reactions are just completely separate. It's not like I said, Pathfinder and DC-20 and Starfinder, they all have an action-based system, or where you have like 3 or 4 action points. And Cosmere kind of does, but it's just within your turn.
Right.
Reactions are typically free in Cosmere, whereas you have to like save an action point in Pathfinder or DC-20 in order to have that reaction available. So that's why I really like that. And like I said too, just the initiative order, it's like super flexible. It changes every round essentially. If changing between quick actions and slow actions, and so it's not necessarily always going to be the same.
Absolutely. Honestly, that was going to be one of mine because I agree. I love that mechanic. I think there's a lot of strategy and I don't know, tactics to it. Do you want the 2 actions or do you want to wait and take the 3? And I want to, I'm going to mess up the list for just a second. Because if I'd have remembered this, I think that I would have added it to one of my favorite mechanics, but it's actually the action point system in DC-20. So this is going to be like a 4B for me. The action point system I thought was really cool. Action points are, whatever, Pathfinder has them, a lot of systems have action points. The one thing I really like about DC-20 is you could spend your action points off of your turn. And so like you can take multiple actions before it ever gets to your turn. And then on your turn, okay, now you only have like 2 action points left. But I feel like you could make an entire build based on using like reactions and doing things off your turn to do help and to do these other things. So when it comes to your turn, maybe there's only like one thing you can do. Anyway, I like the action point system in DC-20. That was not actually my next one. I just wanted to toss that in there because I enjoyed that mechanic a lot.
But speaking of DC-20,
Mhm. Speaking of DC-20, my next one is from DC-20, and that is the Prime modifier in DC-20. And to me, whenever I remember watching Coach when he was talking about the game, and he was referencing another game that he helped make. Anyway, um, as he was talking about it, he was talking about how, like, in the game, it was so open as to how you built your character, so that you could be an intelligent barbarian. And that's sort of what the Prime modifier is in DC-20. It represents your overall experience and prowess as an adventurer. And what it is basically in any skill, or what is it, any ability score, you can have your prime modifier, and basically it's your highest ability. And so whether that is might, or whether that is like intellect, or whatever it comes out to be, that becomes what you use for your attack rolls. So it's no longer, okay, I have a long sword, so I'm using strength. I have a rapier, so I'm using dex. No, whatever your prime modifier is actually what you're using as the mechanic to roll your attack checks, or your spell checks, or your save DCs, or like your awareness checks. And then you can flavor it as, yes, I'm a barbarian, but I'm an intelligent barbarian. I'm looking for that exact moment to strike with my strike, and I'm reading the battlefield. I really I loved that idea, because I don't feel like it forces you into a mold, right? You can be a charismatic fighter, or a charismatic sorcerer, or something of that sort, because ultimately your power comes from your prime modifier.
or a strength-based mage, like
Oh,
wizard.
absolutely.
Where
Yeah.
maybe you're using your strength, and then it gives you the ability to kind of role play, or um, you know put fit in the explain how that fits in the world. Like, how
Right.
does your strength, maybe your magic comes from your health, I don't know,
Hmm.
kind of thing. So
Right. Which, I mean,
yeah.
I enjoy. I really like to play charismatic characters, and so when I play, I really like to be a good talker and a good barterer, and I like to be charismatic. But then I feel like you're often locked into, oh, now I have to play paladin, or now I have to play a bard. But no, I could absolutely play a charismatic cleric, right?
Right.
And I heal you with my charisma in some way. I would figure out a way to flavor it for my character, but I really thought that was such a cool mechanic, and it is probably one of my favorite things about DC-20, honestly.
Yeah,
So,
I do like that for sure.
mhm.
um Awesome. So let's see, number 6, I believe we're on now, is which is my third,
Mhm.
is the age mechanic in Dragonbane. And this, it really kind of comes up in character creation, but I love that your age has an effect on your character. To me, that is, another benefit, like failures, or stuff like that make it more fun. And so in Dragonbane, you can roll for it, and you can roll a d6, and so you get, if you roll a d6 and you want to try to randomize your age, 1 through 3 is young, 4 and 5 is an adult, and then 6 is old.
Right.
And one of the cool things that, there's two then differences. So for a young character, you have 6 plus 2 trained skills, okay, and your agility and your constitution both get a +1 because you're young. Makes total sense to me.
Right. It does. Yes, I agree.
As an adult, you get 6 plus 4 trained skills, to kind of show that you've had more experience. You've, had the time in your life to learn a few more skills, but you don't get any buffs to your attributes.
Hmm.
And then if your character is old, you get 6 plus 6 trained skills. You have had a lifetime to learn, all these skills. However, your strength, agility, and constitution are all -2. However, your intellect and your willpower are both +1.
Yeah.
So you get more
It
skills.
really does make so much sense.
You get more skills
Yeah.
and you have more intellect and willpower, but at the cost of your strength and agility because you're an old man. So I just love that as something that affects your character. Whereas in, a lot of times we choose an age just for role play as far as,
Right, exactly.
as almost every other system.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that in Dragonbane it has an actual effect on your character. So,
Right.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah, thought that was a really cool mechanic.
Yes.
My next mechanic is actually going to be another one from DC 20, actually, and that is going to be the defense in DC 20. Now, most RPGs have some sort of, AC and armor class, something you got to roll to beat to deal damage. Not going to say all of them. Just a little hint from my last one. But in DC 20, I really liked how you actually have a physical defense, and what has actually been changed as I looked at the more recent rule set when I was prepping for this, and the mystical defense. It was mental when we did the pretest of it, but it is now physical defense and mystical defense, and I thought this was really interesting, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Now, your physical defense is going to be your traditional AC, like your ability to take a hit from physical damage. Now, that's the list of damage here is bludgeoning, cold, corrosion, fire, lightning, piercing, poison, slashing. Like your typical physical. Are you hit by a weapon? Are you burnt with a fireball? Are you struck by something toxic? Right, physical defense. Traditionally, your barbarians would be strong at this. Your big burly characters, but then there's a whole different other side of defense called your mystical defense, which represents your ability to endure a supernatural source of damage, like psychic, radiant, sonic, or umbral, is what's listed here. And this makes so much sense to me because, like, okay, you have a tank that can tank your physical damage. Like, yeah, he can take a hit with an axe, he can take a hit with a fireball. But listen, when they attack him, like, psychically, he's going to be weak at that. And so I can almost see some fights where, like, all of a sudden your sorcerer is your tank, is because all that's coming is mystical damage. And to me, I thought that was a really unique thing, but also, like, I feel like it balances things out. Your tank's not always going to be the tank, right? So there's going to be times where, oh, this is not the fight where he has complete control, and then there's going to be fights where all of a sudden your intellectual characters are going to have a better fight and a better defense against enemies. I thought it was really unique. I have not seen that anywhere else, and so I really enjoyed that mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like that there's the multiple types of defense. It's not just an AC. And because, 5e has an AC, but then it's like any other non-physical defense, you typically, it's like, oh, I don't know what my DC is for that, or I don't know what this is, and then you have to look at a skill or an ability. I do like this. It's worth noting too, Daggerheart also has, wait, not Daggerheart. It's the Cosmere RPG, isn't it? Yes.
Cosmere?
The Cosmere RPG has
The three.
it has 3 instead of just 2.
Right.
But it is similar in that there's the physical defense, mental, I think they call it mental defense, and then spiritual defense. Oh no, sorry. Physical, cognitive, and spiritual. So cognitive's kind of mental as well. But yeah, I do like that it has this separated out, and so yeah, I love that mechanic for sure. Yeah, my next one is I kind of cheated and I kind of combined two.
That's fair.
Because you'll hopefully you'll understand why, but essentially, it's advantage and disadvantage. Okay. The advantage and disadvantage mechanic, I have it's in 5e. It kind of happens in the Star Wars Edge of the Empire game. There was some of that advantage and disadvantage I saw as a mechanic, but DC 20 has it, and and I think even maybe Cosmere has it, and so multiple of them have it. So it kind of is spread
Right.
across multiple systems. So that's why I kind of made this a broad one that I'm combining. But advantage and disadvantage, taking 5e definitely, I feel like, pioneered the just roll an extra die and take the higher,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
disadvantage, roll an extra and take the lower. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying it. I'm not saying it was the first. I'm sure there was another one somewhere, but
Right.
it really popularized it, and that's why DC 20 has it. That's why we kind of have that even with Daggerheart for the duality die. There's advantage and disadvantage, and they can stack. Same with Cosmere RPG has it. So, the rolling an extra die and getting that advantage or disadvantage is fantastic.
Hmm.
I think it can be very swingy sometimes, in that, if you're rolling 2 dice at advantage, you still have the opportunity to roll 2 1s.
Hmm.
As
Right. Exactly.
rare as that's going to be, it isn't always the biggest advantage. And same with disadvantage. You still have the opportunity to roll 2 15s, and get your modifier on top of it.
Right.
And so there's kind of an area of failure for that as a mechanic. And so that's why I'm including another kind of addition to it, and that's help actions.
Hmm.
And help actions, I've seen them in like, you can give a help action in 5e, although it looks like something else. A lot of times it is just giving advantage for something.
Right. Yeah.
But in DC 20 specifically, I really liked how they had the help action, which was, in my mind, like, in DC 20, there's also advantage and disadvantage, but the help action, I feel like, is a bigger boost. And so I actually use it in my 5e games. Um, and what it is that it is basically a D8 that you can give to another person. Now in DC 20, you have to spend an action point. So you can spend it on your turn. You can save it and spend it off of your turn if somebody needs help, or use it as a reaction. So basically, you spend an action point and you give somebody a D8 help die. So they roll the D8, and instead of just 2d20 and take the higher, they roll their d20, but they get to add a d8.
Right.
And so it's a higher net positive on average,
Hmm.
for the d8. And then the way that DC 20 does it is that, if you're stacking help actions, they diminish. So, if it's the first time it's a D8, the second time it's a D6, then it's a D4. And so there's diminishing returns. You can't just give them a whole bunch of, D8s. But I do love that. And so, like I said, I feel like those two kind of go together because they're affecting that roll in such a way. But I do love both as a mechanic, and it's something that, it's just part of almost every game now. I feel like I'm seeing is the advantage and disadvantage in some form or fashion.
Hmm.
But and like I said, I feel like started trying to use help just as much, because, like I said, that higher net positive, I feel like, helps the player sometimes feel like they are getting a better advantage in that. So
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that that's a good example of something you've actually brought into your 5e games.
yeah,
Those
absolutely.
that was one of my kind of hopes with this episode is that we can go through some mechanics that, okay, then maybe they're a part of the system, but they could still be brought into the game that you're running. Maybe some of them may
Yeah.
not work the same, but a lot of them could be an interesting addition even to your 5e campaign or something like that. My next one that I'm going through is the only one that I have not yet play tested because it's a system We talked about it in I think it's our last episode, but we have not gotten to actually play test it yet, and that is Draw Steel from MCDM. This is going to kind of be a two-part because it's hard to explain the mechanic I'm talking about without explaining another mechanic that's part of the game, and that is what I'm calling auto hits. And earlier I said pretty much every game has some sort of mechanic where you have an AC, you've got to hit to do damage, except this one. Because in this one, every attack automatically deals damage. In fact, I'm just going to read to you what it says here. It says attacks automatically deal damage. You can still have a bad turn. A tier 1 result, which we're going to talk about in just a second. A tier 1 result is not awesome, but at least you're making progress. The trick is, who's making progress faster? You or the monsters? Since there's no I miss next in this game, fights tend to be short. A 5 rounds is a long fight because everyone's always doing damage. And to me, that's exciting. As someone who has ran campaigns for 10 to 12 players and every combat, even the most simple, can last 3 hours. The idea of such a quick fight, I don't know. To me, that's really exciting. And also, to me, it always sounds like, there's always repercussions for what's happening. Every time you make an attack, you're doing something. Every time a monster makes an attack, it's doing something. Like, there's no wasted turns at all. The next mechanic I want to talk about, just to explain things a little bit further, is the tier system. So in Draw Steel, there's something called outcome tiers. Now, basically, anything you do is going to be a tier 1, a tier 2, or a tier 3. Now, if you were to roll your dice, and your dice, by the way, in MCDM, in Draw Steel, I spent a long time calling it MC. Yeah, anyway. In Draw Steel, it's not a D20 system. It's another dual dice system, except it's 2 D10s. But you roll your 2 D10s, and if it's a roll that is traditionally 11 or lower, that's a tier 1 result. So even technically there's not a nat 1 because you're rolling 2 dice. So even if it's a 2, you still have a tier 1 result. If it is a 12 to 16, that is a tier 2 result. And a 17 or higher brings you into a tier 3 result. Just a quick example of what these could be. I'm looking at just a few abilities here. There's one called Holy Lance. It says a tendril of divine energy shoots forth to draw in your foe. And it says on a tier 1 result, 11 or lower, you do 2 holy damage and pull 2, which would be your distance, right? On a tier 2 result, you do 6 holy damage and you pull 3. On a tier 3, you do 9 holy damage and you pull 4. So what I really like, if you were to use Holy Lance, you are guaranteed to at least get 11 or lower. I'm sorry, you're at least guaranteed to get a tier 1 result, which would be at least 2 damage and at least the pull of 2. So no matter what happens, there's something that's going to happen. There's no wasted turns. And to me, that mechanic sounds really, really interesting and intriguing. I'm really excited to actually play it and see how it plays, because I don't know. I've been the guy who's just rolling duds all night and does nothing in combat.
Yeah.
And I've also been the GM who's feeling so sorry for a player who's over here they can't roll higher than a 5. It's there's just something defeating about that, and the fact that just doesn't happen here. I don't know. To me, that is a cool mechanic.
Absolutely. I mean, the auto hit. They described. Matt Colville described it as, speeding up combat, which always tends to bog down. And giving the players that sense of accomplishment. They don't feel like any turns wasted. And then on top of that, it helps things be really cinematic sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so I do love that as well. That's exciting. Mm-hmm. And yes, Matt from Pocket Dimension was like, "Have you guys played that yet the other day?" And I was like, "No, not yet. We're so
I'm
close.
So excited to.
We really are. But our schedules have just been crazy.
Absolutely.
I don't foresee it slowing down, but I think we can still try to make time.
I think we can. I think so.
It is going to be the next one we play for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I am in full-on soccer dad mode right now, and
nice.
We're coming to a close.
Yes, I am about to start I'm about to start basketball dad mode.
Okay, yes.
But not till
I get it.
I've got a month. I'm
all right. A little bit of spare time to do it.
Okay, well, so my last mechanic, and again, I'm cheating. It's 2 mechanics as well. But
I
it's
cheated a
kind
little
of
bit too.
two sides of the same coin, right? And it's from Daggerheart, and it is the connections and experiences, and they're kind of the same place on the uh, character sheet,
Mhm.
and one can definitely influence the other, which is why I decided to have them both on here. And essentially, when you're creating your character, you make connections with other characters. And the easiest way that they do this is they give you sample questions, although you can make your own, but they give you sample questions to ask other players, like, what was a nickname that you gave me, or
Mhm.
um, you know, what was one thing that what's a lie that I tell, but that you know the truth? I mean, it's just, like I said, you could create your own questions, and there's so many out there to do. And
Mhm.
so, what it does is it forges these role play connections between the party members that I have not seen in another RPG. Now, I'm not saying it's not out there, but again, this is within the 15, plus that Jeff and I have
Mhm.
played.
Yeah.
Uh, Loved the
Yeah.
connections point. So those connections is something you do during character creation, but then another part of that, and kind of at the same time, is that it can influence your experiences. And the experiences are, again, role play uh, additions to your character that have mechanical, uh, you know, influence. They actually have benefits. And they basically are custom skills, if you will. So I had one as a druid in our Daggerheart game that I think I called it oh, they just need a hug. And it was like almost like a charismatic influence, like, oh, someone's in a grumpy mood, they just need a hug, you know.
Mhm.
And it gave me like
Yeah.
a +2 to
Mhm.
whatever role I was making.
Mhm.
And so it's stuff like that. It's custom skills
Right.
for checks. And so I loved that both of those had narrative tie-in to your character, because anytime, and I think that Jeff and I probably can agree on this, is that part of why we play TTRPGs is for a fun storytelling experience
Mhm.
with friends,
Right.
interactive storytelling. And so the more that we can drive narrative and make a better story, I think the better it is.
Mhm. Right.
So,
Agreed. Yeah.
I think that's, it's fantastic. I love it. But I think that does it for our 10 with an
Mhm.
asterisk.
That's true. Yeah.
Our top 10 mechanics from any system.
Right.
And again, tell us the mechanics that you really enjoy. Give us, leave us a comment on YouTube, or hit us up on X or Instagram, wherever you see our posts. Let us know which mechanics are some of your
Mhm.
favorites and from what
Yeah.
system they're from. We have a long list of systems we still have yet to play,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
it's growing all the time.
It's growing much faster than it's being depleted. That's very true.
That's very true. Um, so, but once again, like I said, mechanics are what make this fun. Um,
Mhm.
Jeff, I think let's skip over any kind of talk about what we've played. I
Mhm.
know it's kind of light for both of us,
Mhm.
um, but we're kind of running towards the end of it here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
once
For sure.
again, we are part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. Jeff, do you
Mhm.
want to let us know about that?
Absolutely. We are part of Love Thy Nerd, the podcast network. If you haven't noticed, we have our own YouTube channel now, youtube.com/at the RPG Rundown LTN. Again, still part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. But all the podcasts have been moved to their own individual YouTube channels so that you'll be sure to find the content that you in particular are looking for. However, all the content is still out there. Love That Nerd has everything from board games to wrestling to yours truly with the TTRPG, all the stuffs. But we are a Christian-based podcast network where we're here to love and serve our nerdy neighbors and really just share the stuff that we love with all you people.
Absolutely. So, be sure to check them out. Be sure to give the channel over on YouTube a subscribe and a like if you haven't. That way you can get our content, because previously it was all just under the Love Thy Nerd YouTube channel, and so now you can get it directly here. If you listen to our podcasts, or if you follow us on YouTube, be sure to give us a follow on X/Twitter, or Instagram or TikTok, and you can find the links in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. We, I greatly appreciate you sticking around and joining us in the conversation of these fun mechanics. And so from our table to yours, thanks for joining us on the RPG Rundown.
And until next time, may your rolls be epic and your stories legendary.